Okay, looks like we're holding steady with everyone getting logged in. So I'll get us started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to dive into a topic that we at Hireology feel is really important to anyone looking to compete, and staff up in today's really tough talent market. It's a grind out there. So as a reminder, today's session is going to be recorded, and we'll be sending the recording out to everyone later this week. Also, all webinars from Hireology are available on our website or on our YouTube channel, so please check it out. But thank you today for joining us for what does a people-first recruiting and hiring strategy really mean? So let's get started. I am your host, Kristen Shantz, the VP of Growth Marketing here at Hireology, and I'll be taking us through this topic and webinar. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, feel free to shoot them in the Q&A. And we'll address at the end, but thanks so much for joining us. So with that, I want to kick us off with some hypotheticals. We tend to lead off with data here, but I want to kind of tell a story and help us all get in the frame of mind as an applicant today. So first, this is candidate number one. Let's say, for example, that this is a job seeker looking for a front desk job at a hotel. They come across your open role on Indeed. They then go to your website to learn more about your hotel as an employer, but you don't offer them any employment information, meaning there's nothing about culture, benefits, growth opportunities. There's really not much about you except for job listings. That alone today, and we'll dig into this research, is enough to turn people away. But let's say they decide to apply anyway. They've heard about you, they want to take advantage of the job. They open the application and it isn't designed to work on a mobile device. So they have to zoom in to read the required fields. Hey, I'm on my phone, I'm trying to figure this out. There's a lot of data there. They start to complete the form, but it requires a resume in addition to all of the complete fields that you need. At this point, the candidate gives up because it's too difficult to attach their resume file from their phone. A lot of us have been in that situation, whether it be looking to download content, shopping on your phone, etc. If it's too cumbersome, we're just going to kind of move on. And even if this job seeker, though, does get past all of these obstacles, let's say they have to wait 2 or more weeks to hear back from you for submitting their application. They're kind of sitting there saying, hey, what happened? And what they get is an automated email response a few weeks later requesting availability for an interview. It's kind of like, hey, I've been ghosted, and all of a sudden someone come back. They're forced to navigate back and forth between their calendar and their email app on their phone to send you times that they're free. Once it's scheduled and they arrive, your hiring manager knows nothing about them, and they have to repeat all of the information they've shared with the recruiter. The person is frustrated and moves on to other opportunities. But let's just say, for the sake of this example, that they managed to navigate all of this and get through all of these hurdles and still take an interview. After the interview, though, they wait to hear back from you for another week. When you finally respond, you ask them to come in for another in-person interview. So now they have to take off work or find childcare for another in-person place. You extend an offer and ask the candidate to print out their offer letter, sign it, and send it back to you just from their home without access to that technology. They don't have a printer, and so how do they get it to you? They have to go to Kinko's and do all of those things. So for a lot of you that are in the experience game, how does this feel? If you were applying to a job, a lot of people haven't done that in a while. If you're a business owner, how does that feel? They can't find employer brand information. They're forced to navigate a bad UX. They have to wait 2 weeks to hear back. They're having to navigate a non-optimized thing for their smartphone. They have to come in person in this kind of environment, and they're not even given the option to do this electronically. If we're in the business of bringing in top talent and delivering a good customer experience, we should do the same for candidates. So now let me talk about what a good example of this looks like. Let's talk about example of candidate number 2. The candidate searches for the same job and your opening shows up in the Google search results. It's at the top of what they look for. They go to your website and learn all about your culture and benefits on your career site. And it's a great story, and it talks about why you're an employer of choice. They notice that what you're offering meets those expectations that they have, and they decide to apply directly from your career site. The application is mobile friendly, it's short, and it requires only 5 fields of information. They submit their application, and before they even have time to get further into the process with other companies, a recruiter from your company responds with a personalized text asking them to choose from your 4 available time slots for a video interview. That experience is great, but we're not done yet. During that video interview, the hiring manager asks thoughtful questions that dig deeper beyond what they've already provided in their application. Immediately after the call, the candidate receives another text with some time slots for an in-person interview. While on site, this candidate speaks with several managers. They don't have to come back for a follow-up, who ask a different set of questions that feel consistent across the board. After the interview, the candidate might receive another text asking for their references, or they might receive an offer letter with the option to accept via an e-signature. This example is a lot of what people are trying to do with their customers. So why would you not apply it to the candidates, especially in this competitive market? Rather than asking job seekers to conform to outdated tools and processes, the organization is adapting to what they need of the people to make sure that they're recruiting and hiring top talent. So let's recap what a good example looks like. They found your open roles via job search. They learned more about you via career site. They applied easily via their smartphone. They heard back from you immediately. Speed is critical here. They're communicating with you via text, which is easy and it's on there, like really accessible. It's a smooth and fast interviewing process, speed yet again, and you're e-signing an offer letter. Those are 2 stark examples of what different candidates are experiencing today. And before I move on to the research that kind of informs what we're trying to do, I want to give everyone an assignment today. Don't do it while I'm talking to you now. Please pay attention, but take your phone out. Look for one of your jobs that you know you're hiring for, or even ask one of your friends, your kids, your spouse to do the same. What was that experience? What did it look like? Secret shop your job boards, secret shop your career site, secret shop your candidate experience. Figure out if you are putting people at the center of the most competitive job market we've seen today. So PeopleFirst Hiring HR, I keep talking about it. A people-first organization is one that truly understands the needs, expectations, and mindset of the modern job seeker and employee. The organization that puts these needs above all else, creating an environment where processes, culture, tools, and decision are molded around people, not the company. I think what this means, and I think what's really important for all of us to remember, is that this is what most businesses aspire to be. You're even seeing Amazon compete in a massive way right now as one of the top global employers to put people and people-first hiring and HR at the center of what they do. This is really about how do you make sure you stay competitive and how you deliver the best product and the best experience. And if, as employers, you don't agree with, hey, who I have on staff and who's delivering that experience is important, you're already behind. Every business that's being super competitive today is putting people first, hiring and HR at the center of their strategy. So we've gone over an example and we know what people first organizations model these processes. How do we then look at this? How do we build a better hiring process? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about the modern workforce and what we need to see. So Hirology, we're really built on research, and we want to stay really close to what's going on in the job market, especially now coming out of a pandemic none of us expected, and a really interesting applicant-driven economy today. So we sent a survey to over 1 million applicants, and we have over 5,000 responses from people in market looking for jobs. They represented the healthcare industry, which was hit really hard, retail, automotive, retail in general, hospitality, and many, many more businesses that all of you are looking to hire for. Our findings illustrate some of the interesting trends among today's job seeker that will help us better understand why and how we can truly put people first and build that ideal process that I referenced and talked about before. So let's start digging into the data. One of the most interesting findings is that job seekers are much less loyal now than they were ever before the pandemic. The pandemic fundamentally changed many of us, and many job seekers realize that they do not have to stay in jobs that are not meeting their needs. They've prioritized what they want in their careers, whether that's higher pay, more flexibility, career growth opportunities, and as a result, they're feeling less loyal to their employers. For you, this can be a good thing or a bad thing. It means that your employees are less loyal to you, but also might mean that they're less loyal to their employers in other industries as well. You could be taking top talent from other places. So it means, though, for you as an employer, as a business owner, as a leader, you need to work harder to not only retain your existing employees, but there's also, you need to work harder to take advantage of the opportunity in front of you to reach people in other industries who may be not less happy in their roles. 34, there's a 23%, just looking at the data here, almost 50% had a slightly negative or negative effect on loyalty. I just want that to sit in. Over half of those in market today are not as loyal to what they were once before. So it's a good time to check in with your employees. Of course, the media right now has kind of coined this the Great Resignation, or been a little dramatic about it. People are less loyal and they're in search for something better. But what exactly is it that they're looking for? According to our survey, better pay, more flexibility, lack of career growth options, poor culture, and a need to relocate are the top reasons why people have started to search for jobs. So as an employer looking to both retain and attract talent, these areas you need to focus on when it comes to your employer branding. We'll touch a little bit more on that in the next section where we get to some action items. There's some things on here as employers that we can completely control: career growth, poor culture, hybrid work, more flexibility. It gets really, really difficult when we start to look at things like better pay. And so we want to give you some tools to really tackle this today. We also, competition is higher than ever, and this headline should give you some excitement, but also some pause. We found that job seekers are applying to significantly more jobs than they had in the past. This might go against some of the media's portrayal of job seekers today, that people don't want to work. The reality is that people who are motivated and out there, which are people that you want to hire, are applying to a lot of different roles because they have plenty of options and they want to find what works best for them. In years past, when we've done this survey, we've only gotten about 1 in 4 people applying to more than 10 jobs. This year, we found that close to 45% applied to more than 10 jobs. So just under half of those applying for jobs, active job seekers, are applying to more than 10 jobs, more than 10, with another quarter of them applying to between 5 and 10. This is telling us that there is an opportunity to reach job seekers. You just have to, again, figure out a way to meet their needs and stand out amongst the dozens of other jobs they're applying to. Said differently, when we start talking about processes and candidate experience of the candidate that you may have a phone screen with today, that you received an application from this morning, etc., you were potentially one of 10 companies that they're considering and talking to. So take a second to let that sink in. 1 of 10. So how are you staying competitive? How can you beat out the competition? And if you're competing with very similar job types and very similar companies like yours in market, what are things that you can do to stand out? It first starts with that hiring process and putting people at the center. So we'll talk about that today a little bit more. In addition to it being more competitive and that you're competing with other people, those top candidates are moving really fast through the process, faster than ever before. About 43% of our respondents said that their last job search, everything from the initial research to applying, interviewing, and then actually accepting an offer only took 2 weeks or less. That's remarkably fast. 2 weeks. That's basically, hey, I come back to work and I have a new job offer right after Thanksgiving. That's how fast 2 weeks can be. Everything, and that includes from research to applying to interviewing and then actually accepting that offer. I've heard some customers say it takes them just 2 weeks to respond to an applicant. So think about if you're competing with 9 other companies and you want that top candidate and you're taking 2 weeks to get back to them, how many people you've lost. So people who are out there looking for work and eager to take that position want to move fast, and they choose the companies that meet that. So when I said speed's really critical at the beginning, now you kind of understand why. You need to make sure that you are moving fast and with intention and meeting the needs of the applicant in that process, or you will lose out to those 9 other companies just from day one. So job seekers prefer mobile. So we also found that job seekers today are using their mobile phones for more of their process. This kind of feels like a no duh, but it's really hard when you're sitting in front of your computer and running Zoom processes and opening those jobs to really recognize that. In fact, 46% of the 5,000 that we surveyed said that they're completing the entire process on their mobile device. This is also a pretty remarkable number. Just a few years ago, we never would have seen numbers like this. And as the workforce gets younger and younger and mobile phones continue to advance, the number is only going to increase. So are you creating that experience for candidates that it makes it possible to compete on a mobile device? And this, we'll dig into this more in the presentation, but this is my plug again to do some secret shopping. Even if it's just as simple, pull up your phone and go to apply for a job on your career site and feel about how that experience is. And then for those of you that have lost top talent to, had some turnover to go to another company, or you're losing out on a recruit to another company, secret shop them as well. Compare those two experiences on your mobile phone. And that alone gives you some great insight as you look to compete in this market. And finally, in addition to moving fast, competing with so many other places, needing a mobile phone, new hires want better onboarding. We found that 42% of respondents did not feel prepared after onboarding at their most recent company. 42%. That's kind of a lost investment if you think about all the time your team is spending on recruiting top talent. In these cases, we're finding it's likely that onboarding is impersonal and designed with the company in mind rather than the employee. They probably spent time tiling paperwork and learning about the history of the company rather than getting training required to do their jobs or forming the relations that they need to succeed. Bringing in top talent to make them more productive does not end the minute they accept that offer letter. It's a continued people first experience. That onboarding is that critical. We have found that over 2/3 of those who have a better onboarding experience are more likely to stay with a company over a certain number of years. So if you are really struggling to retain talent now and you're investing time and effort and money to bring in new talent, make sure that phase from hire to actual management is really critical and is supported and seamless with technology. So to bring this all together and kind of not to be so doomsday, but here's what we need to know about today's applicant to really build the right people first strategy. Employees today are less loyal. They're leaving for things like higher pay, more flexibility, better culture. Job seekers are applying to 10+ jobs, meaning you're competing with that many more businesses. Top candidates are moving through this process super, super fast. Applicants and candidates are preferring mobile as part of their process, not just hey, I'm going to call you on your phone, but everything from application to beyond. And then finally, new hires want better onboarding. And if you go back to how quickly they can move through this process and that experience they're looking for, it needs to continue. So you need to put these needs in this list of wants above all else when you look at your hiring and recruiting and human capital management strategy. So now that we know what people first means and kind of some definition of what applicants are looking for, how can we bring this all together to really take some action and build this people first organization? For the remainder of this presentation, I'm going to dig into these pre and post hire strategies you can implement to really make this work. We're going to talk about how to diversify your sourcing to make sure that experience when they're looking is surrounding them and making sure that they find you. We're going to market jobs like products. If this is a competitive market, you need to talk to your marketing team and figure out how to retail your jobs like they are the products that you sell. You need to humanize the candidate communication. How do we make sure that you're delivering a really great experience? You need to enhance that experience as they go through it on top of communication. And then once they're hired, how do you revisit your culture? How do you make sure that it's delivering on that? How do you provide great onboarding so they start from day one in a great experience? How are you more inclusive, especially after the last 18 months that we've had? How do you offer growth opportunities? And then how, finally, do you ask for feedback to continue to optimize this whole process? Putting people first starts from the moment someone begins a job search. Everything from that point needs to be easy and seamless from the job seeker. This is your first and sometimes only opportunity to make an impact on top applicants and truly show that you have value, you value their time and understand their needs. So let's dig into some changes you can make to build that people first pre-hire process. It is no longer effective to just set up an integration with Indeed and hope for the best. I think those of you who have worked with Hireology before have heard us say this, but candidates now are driving this conversation and candidates can see past this. They know it's easy to just set it and forget it on these type of sites. And it sends a message that you're likely automating your entire process and that there won't be an actual person receiving your resume. You have to make an effort to meet candidates where they are, whether that's on social media, Google, or even just dinner with friends. How do you set this up so that it's just job boards and many other sources? So here are some sources to add to your strategy today. Employee referral programs. Your best employees typically know a lot of people who are just like them, and those potential candidates trust their friends, peers more than they trust you. So build a program that incentivizes those existing employees to refer their friends and peers for your open roles. I can tell you right now that 1/3 of my team alone came from referrals. It is a great source of top talent that aligns not only with what you're looking for in the job, but builds a great culture. Social media. Speaking about referring and kind of looking for things, most adults use social media. It's part of our everyday lives at this point. So why not connect with people there? Jobs on Facebook is one of our customers' fastest growing sources of talent. And it makes sense because billions of people use Facebook. And it's really easy and intuitive to navigate. Google and SEO, I think we've all talked about this before. When searching for a job, people spend time on Google. That's where they start. It's second nature to type in searches like sales job Chicago, marketing role Boston, whatever it may be. And Google's own job board takes up all the real estate at the top result. So it's important to show up there. The best way to do this is to rely on SEO best practices, use bullet points, write clearly, keep the job titles short, use keywords, and make sure that you're paying attention to this for every job that you post. Job boards, unfortunately, are still a big part of this. I think they add a lot of value and are a great aggregator of talent and jobs that are out there. People are still going to these sites like Indeed and Career Builder, and they're going to spend time there. So you need to have a presence. We're never going to tell you not to. But it's important to keep in mind that these sites are crowded today, especially in the job economy that we're in, and it's often expensive if you want to compete. The quality of the applicants is something to look at when you look at all these sources compared to each other. You need a multi-sourcing, diversified strategy to make sure you're getting great applicants. And finally, spend time building relationships in your community. This is a good way to connect with more diverse talent and just to meet people where they are. If you're looking for entry-level sales positions, for example, spend time at your local university or community college because that's where these folks are going to be. Bring what story you're telling online in market, especially as we come out of kind of the COVID-19 pandemic. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about my favorite topic as a marketer. You need to market your jobs like products. You need to be really upfront and transparent about what you offer to job seekers. Given some of the stats we saw about how many jobs people apply to and how fast they get hired, they aren't going to take the time to apply if you don't provide them with the basic information that they're looking for. Everything from pay range to benefits to flexibility offerings and more. If they aren't entirely sure you can give them what they need, they won't apply. You can market this information on your career site and lead with it in your job descriptions. You need to train your recruiters to essentially act as salespeople. If a job that is something that is going to drive your productivity and your sales, you need to retail it like your products. You need to set it up and you need to talk to your marketing team. They're going to use diversified sources. They're going to have a really strong website that's going to pull customers through. And they're going to have a sales team who is well-versed in the why you story. That applies to recruiting as well. You need to sell these roles. You need to market these roles like a product and focus on what the applicant wants will help you be able to tailor that story. And next, putting people first means you need to actually treat people like people. Don't rely so much on automation that people starts to feel like a number and that there isn't a human on the other end looking at their application and communicating with them. When talking about automation today, it's about moving faster. It's not about replacing the human to human element of recruiting. Something as simple as personalizing your emails or texts, being extra friendly in your responses so you don't sound too scripted, and be sure to always respond to everyone, even if someone you're choosing not to move forward with. Little acts like this set the reputation of the company. They define you as someone who really cares about simply being thoughtful and approachable to job seekers. Another assignment for you. How many of you have checked your Glassdoor reviews and looked for people talking about your interview process? You would be surprised how many companies ignore this and get slammed on Glassdoor and other places about not being responded to, not having a good experience. And applicants are going there to figure out, because that's the first impression of your business. So it's really, really important to humanize this candidate communication, not only for how you started off with that candidate you're talking to, but it has ways to spread and create a better employment brand for you. And finally, putting people first in the hiring process means making their lives easier when it comes to applying for jobs and interviewing. So make your applications mobile friendly, because from what we know from our research, nearly half of all job seekers are applying to jobs on their phones. Respond quickly. No one likes to wait weeks to hear back from you. You hear people talk about ghosting in different ways. There is nothing worse than trying to find a job and really, really wanting to work for someone and having them not get back to you for 2 weeks. You move on. You kind of give up. And that's really important. Use candidate texting if you want to respond quickly. Email can be tough to navigate on phones. It's also just faster. And so if you're asking them to give you a time for an interview, text really works, and we're seeing great results from it. Make it easy to get through the interviews. It can be really hard for people to get out of their current jobs and responsibilities multiple times for interviews. Make it easy with video calls or by condensing in-person interviews into one session. Hey, can I move this process along and deliver a good candidate experience while vetting the candidate? Find a nice middle ground between the two. And finally, always be transparent about next steps. Mapping out what a candidate can expect shows that you value their time and you understand their potential anxieties about the process. I cannot stress enough how important a good and an enhanced candidate experience can be. When I talked a little bit about a slide ago about Glassdoor, this candidate experience really can shine through as well. And again, big assignments: apply for your jobs, look at your Glassdoor reviews, and just understand, are you meeting the mark to stay competitive today? In a true people-first organization, people need to come first all of the time, not just when you're trying to convince them to come work for you. They need to feel valued and prioritized both as new employee and as a veteran. Here are some actionable steps you can take to make your company a people-first organization post-hire. It's not just important to bring in top talent and then kind of wash your hands of it. This portion of the conversation will be about how you continue it. You can't market your company as a people-first organization if you don't actually act on that when someone gets hired. There is nothing worse than eroding trust in that situation. So it's important for you to revisit your culture before you can make claims about being truly people first. Do you respect people's work-life balance by offering flexibility, mental health days, PTO, or more? What about feedback and recognition? Do you give shout outs? Do you celebrate people's wins? Do you do a good job of balancing this, or is it too heavy on the feedback? Same goes for equal opportunity and inclusivity. It is always the same people getting recognized or promoted. It's time to consider how inclusive your culture really is. Do you have a truly, truly balanced workforce? And finally, spend some time on management training. The old adage that people quit managers, not jobs, does have some truth to it. An employee's perception of your company's culture typically depends on the quality of your management team. So make sure that these folks know how to effectively coach different types of people, train people to develop the skills that they need to do well, and give good and useful feedback, and so on. Next, you need to provide great onboarding, and you can set the tone there. True people-first organizations spend a lot of time, effort, and time getting people started on the right foot. That means providing structured onboarding processes that includes all of the company information, training, resources, etc., that a new hire would need in order to succeed in their role. Great people-first organizations also give warm welcomes to new employees. This means giving company swag, announcing them in company meetings, setting up welcome lunches and meetings, and so on. My team, as you can see in email here, we send a video, knowing that we're all kind of in a hybrid environment. We all wanted to record and give a personal touch. And finally, great onboarding almost never includes paperwork on day one. A lot of us on the call have probably done that, where you get there and all you're doing is trying to figure out the new printer in the office, scanning your ID, watching a training video, and really never talking to your teammates. This kind of stuff is impersonal and doesn't lend itself well to people-first cultures. Ask people to do things digitally before day one so you can spend their first week on more important things like what I've outlined above, such as structuring the process, how you can provide that necessary trainer, and really starting off the day with fostering relationships. And the more you can make it about them joining the team and getting productive from day one, the better off you are at retaining that talent. And then finally, in a true people-first organization, everyone is valued equally, receive the same opportunities, and feel safe to put forth their ideas, regardless of race, ethnicity, gender, or more. But to create this type of inclusive workplace, you can't just pledge to do so. You have to make a real effort. That starts with a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee that develops and executes your strategy for creating more inclusivity. And of course, it needs to be something prioritized at the highest level. So be sure to get leadership buy-in and support. Finally, you have to stick to it. Creating these committees and strategies can come across as performative if you don't actually stick to it and make real change, change internally. This is a critical issue that has come to the top of every HR. I was at the Society for Human Resource Management in September, and this was the #1 topic, is how can we create better DEI communities, better DEI strategies. Not only does it create a more diversified and productive workforce, it also opens the doors for better recruiting and gives you a better swath of talent. So make sure that this is a priority. And if you have not spent time on it, Hireology has lots of great content to provide. We can provide great resources, but being inclusive really, really sets you apart from the competition when thinking back to our early slides. Next, people organizations make room for people to grow. That means you don't expect people to stay in the same role forever. Instead, you build opportunities for them to grow regardless of the type of work that they do. Build out career paths for everyone. Clearly define the requirements for going into higher level roles, and then give people opportunities to achieve those requirements. That might mean paying for online courses or certifications, creating mentorship job shadow programs that give people exposure. Really, really invest in someone and they'll invest back in you. If you want to keep top talent, what does that path look like today, 5 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, etc.? It's really, really important. And I can tell you that the people that you're competing with that are stealing top talent from you or recruiting candidates away from your process are really, really laying this out for them in a significant way. In addition to talking about career pathing, it's really, really important to be self-introspective. Hireology has a core value called eager to improve, and this feedback guides a lot of what we do. Your employees want change over time, and that might mean that we don't always get it right. Being growth-oriented, being successful means that you're willing to take feedback and take action on it. Be in constant communication with your new hires and your veterans to uncover what's working well and what folks would like to see changed. Of course, show that you take this feedback seriously by acting on it. There's one thing by taking feedback and then just being like, hey, we're just going to ignore it. If you're hearing from your employees that they want more management training, invest in that. If you're hearing from your employees that they want more exposure to other teams, create a job shadow program. If you're hearing from employees that they want a different benefits package, take the time to invest in that and then walk them through why you made the decisions that you did. Employees want to feel that they have a voice at the table and that you're taking action on their feedback and that you provide them the context to that feedback. Now, this is a lot easier said than done, and true people-first organizations aren't built overnight. It takes real strategy, dedication, and effort. And on top of that, it takes modern technology. Many of the impersonal and restrictive processes that frustrate and turn people away are the result of outdated tools. If you're relying on disparate systems that aren't designed with a user-friendly approach, you're already behind. You're inevitably going to ask people to confirm these processes and technology needs. It really doesn't help you. And it's going to frustrate your candidates, it's going to frustrate your current employees, and it's going to really make your recruiting and HR teams start from ground zero and have a really, really difficult time. So let's just illustrate what this actually looks like in this nice illustration. When you're operating with disparate systems, it's really tough to execute all of these things well, and in turn, you can't just connect with the modern job seeker. Move them through this process and get them hired. You end up conducting the whole process in silos and manually re-entering data from system to system. That manual re-enter leads to errors. As much as humans want to be perfect, we aren't. It slows you down, it makes it feel clunky, and overall just makes that process more and more about, less and less about the candidate, and more just about checking off a box. But when all of your tools come together on one platform, in this nice illustration with people at the center, your team, your talent at the center of the process, you can move fast, provide a better experience, save time, reduce errors, drive productivity, and ultimately put your people first. Candidates who come in through job boards or referrals or even your career site are all funneled into this one single applicant tracking system. You can communicate with all those candidates and track their progress within the same system, regardless of where they came from. You can then order those screens or reference checks or provide a pre-screen survey. Once they're hired, all of that information you gathered during that process moves on to onboarding, so you're not having to bother them again. And you can immediately start paying and scheduling their time from day one. That is a people-focused process and puts people at the center of your practices and ultimately leads to a more successful business. So with that, that is our story today about how to be really successful in today's applicant economy. I know a lot of you are facing some hiring challenges and what were probably the worst hiring crisis I've seen in my career. Want to open it up to questions if we have any. Hannah, have any come through yet?
I haven't seen any come through, but if you have any questions for Kristen, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So feel free to throw your questions in there. Kristen, we can probably give it another 20 seconds or so, but otherwise we are good.
Awesome.
So we have one question from Thomas. What do you consider the best resource for new hires?
If we're talking about a resource for sourcing new hires, that's where I'll start. And then we'll go from there. And I lots of chats, which is great. So what we're seeing is a real focus on quality in your processes. So there's two sources that we think are going to be best for your quality hire, which is going to be your career site and employer referrals. Now, I think logically you'll understand why. Your career site is someone who has taken the time to do research on what do you stand for, who are you as a business, and they have identified something on that career site that they personally identify with. They're going to be someone who is already in that process and chosen you. Secondarily, the employer referrals are actually seeing 4 times the quality with them. With referrals are basically going to be like good people who work for you know good people. It's as simple as that. And so if you really, really want to up the game of your talent, investing in where you tell your employment brand through your career site and then mobilizing your own workforce to tell that story for you is where you can really make the difference in competition.
Awesome. We have a request to go back to the prior slide, Kristen.
Absolutely. Let me see if I can do this. There we go.
Yeah.
So I can kind of recap it. Putting the center basically means how do you put your open jobs, your referrals, your employer branding that I just talked about, connect it to how you schedule, how you pay, how you onboard. And then within that, how do you make sure that verifications, your applicant tracking, and candidate communications, all of those things can be connected in today's HR tech world. And really, really what sets you apart is making sure that you have something that's connected that puts people at the center of that process. I'll just reiterate what Hannah slacked through. You will get a copy of these slides as well as the recording will be available for you to watch as well. I think that's it that I see, Hannah. Is there anything else?
We have a few more that actually just came in. So how can someone establish company culture with their remote workers?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I will use Hireology as our own case study. So Hireology has been hybrid from day one, pre-pandemic for, we're 11 years old. So since the start, it was our way of getting top engineering talent and finding top sales talent across the country. So we have been able to commit to our culture and keep it carried through, whether it be during a pandemic or not. And it first starts with intention. Does everyone intentionally know what your culture stands for? Can they recite your core values? Can you speak to them in a positive way? With that, we then celebrate those core values and give out awards and intent there. And then finally, we make sure that every employee is getting that information as part of their onboarding and it's carried through. So where it really starts is intent, and then how do you carry it through in your day-to-day? And do you have a rallying cry around it? And just what your 5 core values or your mission statement are is a great place to start.
Awesome. And then we'll answer one more. And then to those that submitted questions about pricing or some more specific things, we will have someone reach out to you after the webinar. But Kristen, last question for you. What impact does references have on getting a quality employee, and how can that reference survey be shortened?
Yeah, there are great tools out there. I think first digitally, being able to send it via email or text is super important. And then I think it's really core questions. And so talking about culture, does someone align with your core values? Do you have that? Partnering with an ATS that provides those questions will really get you a jump on that as well, and can help you kind of manage to it. The biggest thing that we've seen be successful is not in getting references is not necessarily the length of the questions, but more in how you manage that process. So can the candidate give you someone with the right information so you can easily follow up, is where you're really going to have a difference between what slows down the process or not versus actually the questions themselves. We'll also make sure that you have access to my email address after this. I know there's other questions that are a little bit more specific, and I want to make sure we answer them, Hannah. But with that, I think we're good for today.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I just threw Kristen's email into the chat. So if you have questions for her, please feel free to quickly copy that down. But we will then wrap it up and let you have some time back in your day.
Thanks, everybody. Have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Appreciate your time today, and good luck out there.